From top to bottom, UFC 178 may very well be the most intriguing card of 2014. We've got the returns of Dominic Cruz and Kat Zingano, plus a flyweight title fight. Welcome in to MMA Live. My name is Todd Grisham. Demetrious Johnson looks to defend his flyweight title for the 5th time as he takes on Chris Cariaso. And to break this fight down, we have from Las Vegas our MMA writer Brett Okamoto, plus on the phone the author of Fightnomics, Reed Kuhn. Brett, we'll start with you. Mighty Mouse has been strong as a champion, but in his most recent fight, some fans left early because it was so dull. What will he need to do this time around to keep them interested?
Yeah, that's really a tough question to answer. I mean, I personally don't find Demetrious Johnson to be dull. I understand why some fans do. They haven't embraced this 125-pound division yet, and I think that that's partly, just due to the fact that it's still relatively a new weight class, and also the fact that Demetrious Johnson, he just doesn't talk a lot. He's not a guy who likes to get it done on the microphone, and now he's facing a guy in Chris Cariaso who a lot of people aren't given a chance to beat him. So this is a tough sell for Demetrious Johnson. I think if he's unwilling to talk more on the microphone, which I think he is, he just got to go out there and try to finish fights, try to win in spectacular fashion like he sometimes does, and eventually hope that fans, want to see that.
Reed, you heard Brett say that not many people are giving Chris Cariaso an opportunity to win this fight. You're an expert with the numbers. What do they say?
Well, that's true. The betting public, at least, is certainly going hard on Johnson. He's a 14-1 favorite here, which would be the biggest favorite in title fight history if it stays. Now, normally that line will tighten up closer to fight time. Cariaso, on the other hand, his numbers are actually very similar to Johnson's. They are pretty close in terms of key metrics like accuracy and pace, even elusiveness, measuring how they avoid strikes. So Cariaso actually comes in looking pretty good on paper, but I think the key difference here, there is a big difference in the strength of schedule. Johnson has faced much more difficult opponents, and he has performed admirably in those fights. So he's still the younger champion, and everybody knows that he is one of the fastest guys in the sport. So I think that's going to be playing a big role. His conditioning is going to be superior in the championship rounds, and so he should be able to finish up pretty strongly. I think Cariaso eventually is not going to be able to keep up with that pace.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is Chris Cariaso should certainly be the underdog, but maybe not 14-1?
That's correct. I don't think 14-1. He's pretty solid, and since dropping to flyweight, he's done better. But just, Johnson is he is a champ for a reason, and he performs very well.
Well, Brett, some said who when we found out that Demetrious Johnson was fighting Cariaso. What kind of challenges do you expect him to pose to Mighty Mouse?
Unfortunately, not many. And I hear what Reed is saying in terms of, what you see on paper and the stats that the Cariaso can put up. He is a good fighter, but in terms of when he actually gets in the cage, I think the guy who's going to give Demetrious Johnson problems, or is at least capable of giving Johnson problems, is someone who's going to throw punches and combinations, because Johnson is incredibly difficult to hit, and he's got to throw with power, and he has to be able to move as he's throwing them. You can't stand in front of Demetrious Johnson. He's just too fast. He'll pick you apart. And Cariaso does sort of throw on the he's not really on the guy who's on the balls of his feet, moving around the cage a lot, and he doesn't have a lot of knockout power. Only 3 knockouts in his entire career. I think you need sort of that fight-changing knockout power to beat a dominant champion like Demetrious Johnson, because you're not going to beat him over the course of a 25-minute fight.
All right, Reed, what is the biggest key to this fight?
Well, I agree with Brett. First of all, Cariaso does not have the knockout power threat. He has a 0% knockdown rate. Essentially, he hasn't gotten it done since he's been in the UFC. Johnson has. We saw him pull that out against Benavidez. He looked very powerful. So the key is who's winning those exchanges. Cariaso is used to having the southpaw advantage. Johnson is more experienced. I don't think that's going to throw him off. I think he's going to be landing the more efficient combinations, and that's going to be winning round to round, and eventually may do some damage. And his defensive wrestling is also going to help him out here. So I think Johnson grinds this out. He goes to a decision, possibly even a very late finish.
Brett, your pick.
Yeah, I would agree with Reed. This is not an unwinnable fight for Chris Cariaso. 14-1 probably is a little bit high. We've seen sometimes in these these championship fights. You have Alexander Gustafsson fighting John Jones, and the line is completely out the window. You almost can't bet on it because the line is so high. I don't think it should be 14-1, but at the end of the day, this is a good stylistic matchup for Demetrious Johnson. I do think he'll get a finish late in the fight.
No one gave TJ Dillashaw a chance against Renan Barão, but we know how that one ended, so don't count Cariaso out until the fight is done. That'll do it for this edition of MMA Live. Make sure to keep it tuned right here to ESPN.com for highlights of UFC 178 and post-fight reaction. Until next time, I'm Todd Grisham. Keep fighting.